Have you ever found yourself tearing up at a movie scene that everyone else watched without emotion? Do you cry during commercials, when listening to certain songs, or even when someone simply shows you kindness? While others might dismiss this as being too sensitive or overly emotional, psychology reveals a completely different truth, one that might actually surprise you. People who cry easily aren't weak, fragile, or unable to handle life. In fact, research shows that frequent crying is connected to specific psychological traits that reveal strength, depth, and capacities that others simply don't possess. Your tears aren't a flaw in your design. They're actually a window into a remarkable way of experiencing the world. In this video, we're uncovering 6 psychological facts about people who cry easily, and what science really says about emotional expression. If you've ever felt ashamed of your tears or wondered why you feel things so intensely, prepare to see your sensitivity in an entirely new light. The tears come without warning. You're watching something beautiful unfold, hearing a story that touches something deep inside you, or witnessing a moment of genuine human connection, and suddenly, your eyes are filling up. You try to hold it back, especially if you're around others. But the tears come anyway. Society has taught you to see this as weakness, as something to be embarrassed about. But what if everything you've been told about crying is backwards? People who cry easily often possess emotional courage that others lack. Think about what crying actually requires. You have to be willing to feel your emotions fully, rather than pushing them down or away. You have to allow yourself to be vulnerable, even when vulnerability feels dangerous or uncomfortable. Most people spend enormous energy suppressing their feelings, building walls to keep emotions at a manageable distance. You don't do that, or at least you can't do it as effectively, and that's not because you're weak. It's because you have a different relationship with your emotional experience. The psychological research on emotional expression reveals something fascinating. People who cry easily tend to have lower levels of alexithymia, which is the inability to identify and describe emotions. In other words, you're deeply connected to your feelings. You don't just experience emotions vaguely in the background, you feel them clearly, recognize them accurately, and allow them to move through you without excessive resistance. This emotional awareness is actually a form of intelligence that many people never develop. Your tears are a form of honesty. When you cry, you're telling the truth about what's happening inside you. You're not pretending to be unaffected when something moves you. You're not performing toughness or indifference to protect your image. You're simply being real, allowing your internal experience to show externally. In a world where people constantly hide their true feelings behind masks of control and composure, your willingness to cry is an act of authenticity that takes genuine strength. Think about what happens when you try to suppress tears. Your throat tightens, your chest constricts, you hold your breath, tension builds throughout your body. Suppressing emotion requires muscular effort, mental energy, and creates physical stress. When you allow yourself to cry, you're releasing that tension rather than holding it inside. You're choosing the health of expressing over the illusion of control. That's not weakness. That's wisdom your body already understands, even when your mind has been taught to judge it. The strength in your tears also shows up in your relationships. When you cry in front of someone, you're trusting them with your vulnerability. You're showing them something real and unfiltered about who you are. This creates opportunities for genuine connection that people who never cry simply can't access. Your tears invite intimacy, allowing others to see you fully and respond to you authentically. The relationships you build through this vulnerability tend to be deeper and more meaningful than surface-level connections built on everyone maintaining their emotional armor. Your ability to cry easily also indicates resilience in ways that might surprise you. Crying is how your body and mind process intense emotions and release stress. When you cry, you're actually engaging in a form of emotional regulation that helps you recover from difficult experiences. People who suppress tears are holding on to that stress, carrying it in their bodies and minds, letting it accumulate over time. You're letting it go, allowing your system to reset, moving through emotions rather than getting stuck in them. The cultural message that crying equals weakness is particularly harmful because it's backwards. Suppressing your natural emotional responses, pretending you don't feel things you actually feel, disconnecting from your inner experience, that's what creates psychological problems over time. Anxiety, depression, relationship difficulties, And even physical health issues often stem from chronic emotional suppression. Your tears are actually protecting you from these outcomes by giving your emotions a healthy outlet. What makes crying especially powerful is that it's an act of self-acceptance. When you allow yourself to cry, you're accepting that you're human, that you have feelings, that certain things affect you deeply. You're not demanding that you be different from who you are. You're not fighting against your own nature or trying to force yourself into some ideal of stoic emotional control. You're meeting yourself where you are, and that acceptance is the foundation of genuine mental health. There's also courage in being willing to cry in a world that judges it. You know that people might see you as weak, overly sensitive, or unable to handle things. You know that crying might be used against you, might change how people perceive you, might affect your professional image or social standing. Yet you still allow your tears to fall because the alternative, disconnecting from your feelings to maintain an image, is more costly to your well-being than any judgment you might face. Your tears carry information that's worth paying attention to. They tell you what matters to you, what touches you, what your values are. When you cry at injustice, you're learning about your sense of fairness. When you cry at beauty, you're discovering what moves your soul. When you cry at loss, you're honoring what was meaningful to you. People who never cry are missing these messages from their own hearts, operating without the emotional guidance system that your tears provide. The physical act of crying also has measurable benefits. Emotional tears contain stress hormones that your body is literally releasing. They trigger the production of endorphins, natural pain relievers that help you feel better. They activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms you down after periods of stress. Your body knows what it's doing when it cries. It's engaging biological processes designed for healing and recovery. What your easy tears ultimately reveal is that you haven't fully bought into the cultural story that emotions should be controlled, hidden, or suppressed. Some part of you knows that feelings are meant to be felt, that vulnerability is strength, that authenticity matters more than image. You're living according to an emotional truth that others have been trained away from. And while that can feel isolating or difficult, it's actually keeping you more psychologically healthy than the alternative. This emotional openness, this willingness to feel and express what's happening inside you, connects directly to another aspect of your psychology that's equally misunderstood: the depth at which you experience everything life offers. You don't just experience emotions, you experience them at volumes that others can't quite comprehend. A song doesn't just sound nice, it moves through your entire body and stays with you for hours. A kind gesture doesn't just feel pleasant, it overwhelms you with gratitude that brings tears. A sad story doesn't just seem unfortunate, it breaks your heart as if it happened to you personally. This intensity of feeling isn't something you chose or cultivated. It's simply how you're wired, how your nervous system processes the world. People who feel deeply are usually operating with what psychologists call high emotional sensitivity, or sensory processing sensitivity. Your nervous system picks up on emotional and sensory information that others filter out as background noise. You're processing more data, feeling more layers, experiencing more dimensions of every situation. While others might notice the surface of an interaction, you're feeling the undercurrents, the unspoken tensions, the subtle shifts in energy that reveal what's really happening beneath the words. This depth of feeling means you live in a richer emotional world than most people. You experience the full spectrum of human emotion, not just the muted middle range. Your joys are more intense, your sorrows cut deeper, your love feels more powerful, your fears loom larger. This can be exhausting and overwhelming, but it also means you have access to experiences of beauty, connection, and meaning that others can only vaguely imagine. You're not just going through life, you're feeling life in all its complexity and intensity. The psychological research shows that people with deep feelings tend to be more empathetic. You don't just understand intellectually that someone is hurting. You feel their pain in your own body. You don't just recognize that something is beautiful. You're moved by it in ways that create physical sensations. This empathy makes you highly attuned to others, able to provide support and understanding that feels truly genuine, because it comes from actually sharing in their emotional experience, rather than just observing it from a distance. Your deep feelings also make you more creative. Artists, writers, musicians, and creators of all kinds often report experiencing emotions intensely. The depth of your feeling gives you material to work with, emotional landscapes to explore and express. Even if you don't consider yourself particularly artistic, your emotional depth probably shows up in how you communicate, how you connect with others, how you make sense of your experiences through the rich emotional context you bring to everything. But there's a cost to feeling everything so deeply. The world isn't designed for people with your level of sensitivity. You get overwhelmed in situations that others handle easily. Crowds, loud environments, emotionally intense situations, conflict, even too much positive stimulation can push you past your threshold faster than it does for others. You need more recovery time, more quiet, more space to process all the feelings that accumulate throughout your day. This deep feeling affects your relationships in profound ways. You love intensely, which means you also hurt intensely when relationships struggle or end. You pick up on every small shift in someone's mood or behavior, which can create anxiety, but also allows you to be incredibly responsive to your partner's needs. You need relationships that can match your depth, connections where your intensity is welcomed rather than seen as too much or overwhelming. People who feel deeply are usually more affected by art, music, nature, and beauty. You might cry at concerts, get overwhelmed by particularly moving films, or feel transformed by witnessing a sunset. These aren't just pleasant experiences for you. They're profound encounters that touch something essential in your soul. While others might enjoy these things casually, you're having spiritual experiences, moments that remind you what it means to be fully alive and present. The downside is that you also feel negative emotions with the same intensity. Sadness can feel like drowning. Anxiety can be paralyzing. Anger can overwhelm your entire system. Shame and guilt cut deeper and last longer. You can't cherry-pick which emotions you feel intensely. If you feel the positive ones deeply, you're going to feel the negative ones deeply too. This creates challenges that people with less emotional intensity simply don't face. Your deep feelings make you highly conscientious about how you affect others. You feel guilty easily, because you can imagine so vividly how your actions impact people. You worry about hurting others, because you know intimately how painful that feels. You go out of your way to be kind, because you understand the power of small gestures to make someone's day better or worse. This consciousness can make you a better person, but it can also create pressure to constantly manage your impact on everyone around you. What others might dismiss as overthinking is often you processing the emotional complexity that you naturally perceive. You're not making things more complicated than they need to be. You're responding to the actual complexity that you're experiencing. When someone says you're too sensitive, what they're really saying is that they don't feel things at the depth you do, and your intensity makes them uncomfortable or confused. This depth of feeling is actually a gift, even though it often feels like a burden. You have access to ranges of human experience that most people barely touch. You understand emotional truths that others spend years in therapy trying to grasp. You can connect with people at levels that create genuine intimacy and understanding. You experience beauty and meaning in ways that make life feel sacred rather than mundane. These capacities aren't weaknesses. They're profound strengths that our culture has failed to value properly. The challenge isn't to feel less deeply. That's not really possible anyway, and trying just creates disconnection from yourself. The challenge is learning to work with your sensitivity rather than against it, honoring your needs while navigating a world that wasn't built for people like you. And this connects to another revealing truth about your tears: what it means when they come so quickly. It happens in seconds. Someone shows you unexpected kindness. You hear a certain phrase. You witness something beautiful or heartbreaking. And before you can even process what's happening, tears are already forming. You don't have time to brace yourself or build up defenses. The emotion hits, and the tears follow immediately, bypassing all the mental controls that other people seem to have in place. This instant response reveals something important about your psychological makeup. If you tear up quickly, it means your emotional arousal system has a low threshold. Your nervous system moves rapidly from stimulus to response without much filtering or delay. While others have time to evaluate, rationalize, or suppress their emotional reactions, you're already feeling and expressing before that cognitive processing can happen. This isn't a malfunction. It's just a different neurological setup, one that prioritizes authentic response over controlled reaction. This quick emotional response indicates that you have less psychological distance between your conscious mind and your emotional core. Many people develop layers of defenses that create separation between feeling something and showing it. They have time to decide whether to express emotion because there's built-in delay in their system. You don't have that buffer, or it's much thinner than average. Your feelings reach the surface quickly because there's less internal infrastructure designed to hold them back. The speed of your tears also reveals something about your trust in emotional expression. On some level, you believe that feelings are safe to show, that crying won't destroy you, that vulnerability is acceptable. Even if you feel embarrassed or try to hide your tears, the fact that they come so quickly means your deeper psychological programming allows emotional expression rather than automatically blocking it. This trust was either built into your temperament or developed through experiences where emotional expression was accepted rather than punished. Your quick tears might also indicate high levels of emotional empathy. When you witness someone else's pain or joy, your mirror neurons fire intensely, creating an almost instantaneous emotional resonance in your own body. You're not just understanding their feelings intellectually, you're experiencing a version of them yourself, and that experience triggers your own tears before you can construct any cognitive barrier between their emotion and yours. This rapid emotional response affects how you process experiences. While others can watch something difficult and think about it analytically, maintaining emotional distance, you're immediately immersed in the feeling of it. This means you process events emotionally first, cognitively second. You understand things through feeling them rather than thinking about them, which gives you different insights but also different vulnerabilities than people who process primarily through cognition. The speed of your tears can create challenges in situations that require emotional composure. Professional settings, difficult conversations, conflicts, these become harder when you can't control how quickly emotions show up on your face. You might tear up during a performance review, while giving a presentation, or when having a serious discussion, and this visible emotion can be misinterpreted as instability or weakness, rather than understood as simply how your system works. What makes this particularly difficult is that once the tears start, they often intensify rather than stop. The crying itself becomes another stimulus that triggers more emotion, creating a feedback loop that's hard to interrupt. You're not just crying about the original trigger anymore. You're crying about crying, feeling embarrassed or frustrated or overwhelmed by your inability to stop. And these secondary emotions fuel more tears. Your quick tears also mean you can be easily moved by beauty and goodness in ways that catch you off guard. A stranger's small act of kindness towards someone else, a moment of unexpected grace in a difficult situation, words that express something you've felt but never articulated. These can bring instant tears, not of sadness, but of recognition, connection, or appreciation. You're moved quickly because you're open to being moved, receptive to the emotional truth in moments that others might not even notice. This fast emotional response connects to your overall stress response system. If your tears come quickly, your entire arousal system probably activates rapidly. You might feel anxiety suddenly, get angry quickly, become excited or enthusiastic without much buildup. Your emotional accelerator is sensitive, which means you go from zero to intense feeling faster than people with less reactive systems. This creates a life of more emotional peaks and valleys compared to those who live in a more moderate, stable emotional range. There's also a connection between quick tears and creativity or imagination. Your rapid emotional response might be linked to a vivid imagination that creates immediate emotional resonance with stories, images, or possibilities. You don't need much time to emotionally invest in something because your imagination fills in details and creates emotional connections almost instantaneously. This makes you highly responsive to art, storytelling, and creative expression. What your quick tears ultimately mean is that you have an emotional immediacy that keeps you connected to the present moment in ways others miss. You're not living 5 steps removed from your feelings, analyzing and managing them before allowing yourself to experience them. You're meeting your emotions as they arise, in real time, with minimal buffering. This creates a kind of emotional authenticity that's rare and valuable, even when it feels uncomfortable or inconvenient. This immediate emotional response connects to another aspect of your psychology that's equally revealing. Why holding back tears feels impossible for you, even when you desperately want to maintain composure. You've tried. In important meetings, during difficult conversations, At funerals where you wanted to be strong for others, you've tried to hold back the tears. You clench your jaw. Breathe carefully. Think about something else. Use every trick you've learned over the years. Sometimes you can delay them for a few minutes, but eventually they come anyway, breaking through whatever fragile dam you constructed. This inability to hold tears back isn't about lacking willpower or self-control. It's about having an emotional system that simply doesn't have the infrastructure for extended suppression. People who can't hold tears tend to have nervous systems where emotional expression is the default rather than emotional concealment. Your body is designed to release feeling, not contain it. When emotion builds inside you, the natural pressure relief valve is crying, and that valve opens whether you consciously want it to or not. Fighting against this is like trying to stop a sneeze or suppress a yawn. You might manage it briefly, but the biological imperative is stronger than your conscious control. This inability to suppress tears reveals that you haven't developed the psychological defenses that allow long-term emotional containment. Most people who can hold back tears for extended periods have built internal structures, dissociation, intellectualization, compartmentalization, that create distance between feeling and expression. These defenses develop in response to environments where emotional expression was unsafe, unwelcome, or punished. The fact that you can't hold tears back suggests either that your early environment allowed emotional expression, or that your temperament is so oriented toward emotional release that defenses never fully formed. Your inability to hide tears makes you radically honest in ways that make others uncomfortable. People can't pretend they haven't affected you emotionally when your tears are visible evidence. They can't maintain comfortable distance when your vulnerability is right there in front of them. Your tears force acknowledgement of emotional reality that others might prefer to ignore. And this disrupts the social contracts built around emotional concealment and polite pretense. This transparency creates vulnerability in professional and social contexts. You can't maintain the poker face that certain situations demand. You can't hide when you're hurt, scared, or overwhelmed. People can read your emotional state even when you'd prefer privacy. And this visibility can be used against you by those who view emotional expression as weakness to exploit. The inability to hide your tears means you can't always control how others perceive and respond to you. But there's also power in this inability to hide. You can't be manipulated into pretending things are okay when they're not. You can't participate in the collective denial that allows harmful situations to continue unchallenged. Your tears tell the truth even when words fail, even when systems of power demand silence, even when it would be easier to go along with pretense. This involuntary honesty can be inconvenient, but it's also a form of integrity. Your inability to hold back tears also affects how you process trauma and difficult experiences. While others might be able to delay their emotional response until they're in private, you have to deal with feelings as they arise, in real time, wherever you happen to be. This can feel humiliating and exposing, but it also means you're less likely to carry unprocessed emotion for extended periods. You can't compartmentalize as effectively, which forces you to deal with things more immediately. This pattern shows up in how you handle conflict. You might want to stay calm and rational during an argument, but if the emotional intensity crosses a certain threshold, tears come regardless of your intentions. This can derail important conversations, make you seem unable to handle disagreement, or shift dynamics in ways you didn't choose. Partners or colleagues might learn they can win arguments simply by making you cry, which creates its own set of problems in relationships and professional settings. The physical experience of trying to hold back tears is itself revealing. The tightness in your throat, the pressure behind your eyes, the shakiness in your voice. These sensations show you how much effort emotional suppression requires. Your body is literally working against what it's trying to do, creating tension and stress in the attempt to prevent natural release. The exhaustion you feel after successfully holding back tears for any length of time demonstrates the cost of fighting your own emotional system. People who can't hold tears often report feeling betrayed by their own bodies, especially in moments when emotional control feels crucial. You want to be composed during a job interview, strong during a crisis, professional during a difficult meeting, but your tears have other plans. This disconnect between what you want to project and what your body actually does can create shame and frustration, a sense of being at war with yourself in moments that already feel challenging. What makes this particularly complex is that the inability to hold tears isn't consistent. Sometimes you can manage it, creating false hope that you've finally developed better control, only to have tears burst through unexpectedly in a different situation. The unpredictability adds another layer of anxiety. You never know for certain when you'll be able to maintain composure and when your tears will overflow despite your best efforts. Your inability to hide what you feel ultimately reveals that you're living with less distance between your inner experience and outer expression than most people. The gap that others maintain between feeling and showing, between experiencing and expressing, is much narrower for you, or sometimes doesn't exist at all. This makes you more authentic and genuine, but it also makes you more vulnerable in a world that often rewards emotional concealment over emotional honesty. This transparency, this inability to construct and maintain emotional masks, connects directly to why your emotions move at the speed they do. A pattern worth examining more deeply to understand what it reveals about your psychological makeup. The feeling sweeps through you like a wave you never saw coming. One moment you're fine, and the next you're overwhelmed by emotion so intense it takes your breath away. There's no gradual buildup, no warning signs that give you time to prepare. Your emotions don't creep up slowly. They crash into you with full force, and by the time you register what's happening, you're already deep in the middle of feeling it. This speed isn't random, and it's not something you're doing wrong. It's how your emotional system is fundamentally wired. If emotions come fast, it's because your limbic system, the emotional center of your brain, has a more direct pathway to your conscious awareness and physical response systems than it does in people with slower emotional processing. In most people, emotions travel through various regulatory circuits that modulate and moderate the response before it reaches conscious awareness. Your system has fewer or weaker filters, which means emotions hit you faster and stronger, more directly connected to the stimulus that triggered them. This rapid emotional processing is actually associated with certain personality traits that psychologists consider valuable. High emotional intelligence often correlates with quick emotional recognition. You identify what you're feeling almost instantly because the signal is strong and clear. While others might spend time confused about their emotional state, you know immediately. This clarity, even though it comes with intensity, provides information that helps you navigate situations with emotional wisdom that slower processors lack. Your fast-moving emotions also indicate that you have strong connections between your sensory processing and your emotional centers. When you see, hear, or experience something, it doesn't just register as neutral information. It immediately connects to emotional meaning. A facial expression triggers instant recognition of another person's feeling. A tone of voice immediately conveys emotional content beyond the words. This rapid processing gives you social and emotional information faster than people whose systems require more time to make these connections. The speed of your emotions affects your decision-making in distinctive ways. You're more likely to make choices based on how things feel, rather than extensive logical analysis. This isn't because you're irrational or impulsive. It's because your emotional guidance system provides clear, immediate signals about what feels right or wrong, safe or dangerous, good or bad. While others are still thinking through options, your gut has already told you the answer. And often that gut feeling is accurate because it's processing complex information rapidly through emotional channels. But fast emotions also mean you can be emotionally exhausted more quickly than others. You're not just having one or two strong feelings per day. You're riding emotional waves constantly, experiencing multiple intense feelings within hours or even minutes. Each wave requires energy to process and integrate. By the end of a day, you might be emotionally depleted while others still have capacity, not because you're weaker, but because you've processed so much more emotional content. This rapid emotional movement makes emotional regulation more challenging. The strategies that work for people with slower emotions, like cognitive reappraisal or distraction, require time that you don't have. The emotion is already at full intensity before you can apply regulatory strategies. You need different tools, ones that work with fast-moving feelings rather than trying to slow them down or redirect them before they arrive. Your fast emotions also mean you have less time to construct defenses or protective narratives around your feelings. When hurt happens, you feel it immediately and intensely before your mind can soften it with rationalizations or explanations. This creates a kind of emotional rawness, an unfiltered relationship with your feelings that can be painful but is also deeply authentic. You're feeling the truth of your emotional experience without the buffering that interpretation provides. Relationships take on unique dynamics when your emotions move this fast. You fall into love quickly, feel hurt rapidly, experience anger suddenly, and shift between emotional states in ways that can confuse partners who move at different speeds. You might be over an argument before your partner has finished processing what happened, or still hurt by something they've already forgotten. This emotional asynchrony creates challenges in matching and meeting each other where you are. The professional world often penalizes fast emotional movement because it values stability and predictability. You might be seen as reactive or unstable when you're actually just responsive and emotionally honest. Your visible emotional shifts can make colleagues uncomfortable or create concerns about your professional judgment, even though your fast emotions don't necessarily interfere with your ability to think clearly or make good decisions. What makes fast emotions particularly challenging is that they can feel like they're controlling you rather than you controlling them. The emotion arrives so quickly and powerfully that you don't experience much choice in the matter. You're not deciding to feel hurt or angry or sad. You're suddenly feeling it before any decision point exists. This can create a sense of being at the mercy of your emotions, vulnerable to being swept away by feelings that move faster than your conscious mind can manage. Your fast-moving emotions also mean you experience emotional variety and richness that others might miss. You're not stuck in one emotional state for long. You feel many things throughout a day, experiencing the full range of human emotion, rather than living in a narrow band of mild feeling. This emotional mobility, while exhausting, also means you're rarely emotionally stagnant. You move through feelings rather than getting stuck in them, which is its own form of emotional health. There's also a connection between fast emotions and creativity. The rapid emotional movement provides constantly changing emotional perspectives and experiences that fuel creative work. Artists, writers, musicians often describe their emotional intensity and variability as essential to their creative process. Your fast emotions give you material to work with, experiences to draw from, depth and variety that enriches whatever you create or contribute. What the speed of your emotions ultimately reveals is that you're living in a different emotional time frame than many people around you. Your emotional clock runs faster, which means you experience more emotional moments, more shifts, more intensity within any given period. This isn't better or worse than slower emotional processing, it's just different. And understanding this difference helps you stop judging yourself for not matching other people's emotional pacing. This rapid emotional movement, combined with everything else we've explored about your tears and feelings, creates a specific kind of life experience that deserves acknowledgement and understanding. The beautiful burden of living with an open heart in a world that often asks you to close it. Everything we've discussed comes together into a unified experience that defines how you move through the world. The easy tears, the deep feelings, the quick emotional responses, the inability to hide what you feel. These aren't separate traits, but different expressions of the same fundamental reality. You have an open heart. You feel things. You let them in. And while this openness creates profound difficulties, it also creates something rare and precious that the world desperately needs. An open heart means you haven't fully armored yourself against life. Despite all the pain you've experienced, all the times your sensitivity has been used against you, all the moments when you wished you could feel less, you remain emotionally accessible. You still let things affect you. You still allow beauty to move you, suffering to break your heart, kindness to overwhelm you with gratitude. This openness takes courage that most people don't recognize because it looks like vulnerability rather than strength. The burden of an open heart is real and shouldn't be minimized. You get hurt more easily because you're emotionally available to be hurt. You carry other people's pain because your empathy doesn't have good boundaries. You feel the weight of the world's suffering in ways that can become overwhelming. You cry at things that don't affect others. Feel drained by environments that others tolerate easily. Need recovery time that seems excessive to people who don't understand how much you're processing emotionally. But the beauty is equally real. You experience love at depths that create transcendent moments of connection. You find meaning in small things that others walk past without noticing. You have capacity for joy, awe, and wonder that makes ordinary moments feel sacred. You understand emotional truths that others spend lifetimes trying to grasp. You connect with people at levels that create genuine intimacy and understanding. Your open heart allows you to fully inhabit your human experience rather than observing it from behind protective walls. This openness makes you a safe person for others to be around. People sense that you won't judge their emotions harshly, because you're so familiar with emotional intensity yourself. They know they can cry around you without you becoming uncomfortable or trying to fix them. They feel permission to be real and vulnerable because you model that possibility through your own emotional authenticity. Your open heart creates space for others to open theirs. The challenge of maintaining an open heart in a closed world creates ongoing tension in your life. You're constantly navigating between honoring your sensitive nature and protecting yourself from being overwhelmed, between staying open enough to feel life fully and building enough boundary to survive it, between being authentic and protecting yourself from judgment. This balancing act requires constant adjustment and attention in ways that people with naturally closed hearts never have to consider. Your open heart also means you're changed by what you experience in ways others aren't. A conversation, a film, a moment of natural beauty. These don't just pass through you, leaving you unchanged. They alter something in you, add to your emotional database, shift your understanding, expand your capacity. You're emotionally porous, absorbing experiences into your being rather than observing them from a protected distance. This makes you emotionally rich, but also emotionally saturated, carrying more than you sometimes know what to do with. There's grief in having an open heart. Grief for the world's suffering that you feel so acutely. Grief for the beauty that gets destroyed or ignored. Grief for the people who live closed off, never experiencing the emotional depths you access regularly. Grief for your own struggles with sensitivity in a culture that doesn't value or understand it. This grief is part of the package, inseparable from the gift of feeling deeply. What you need to understand is that your open heart isn't something to fix or change. It's not a problem requiring solution or a weakness needing strengthening. It's a fundamental aspect of your being, as integral to who you are as your physical features or cognitive abilities. The work isn't to close your heart or feel less. It's to learn how to live well with an open heart in a world that will sometimes hurt you for having one. This means developing practices that support your sensitive system, creating enough quiet and solitude to process all the feelings you accumulate, building relationships with people who understand and value emotional depth rather than judge or dismiss it, setting boundaries that protect your energy without completely cutting you off from life, finding ways to express and release emotions regularly so they don't build up to overwhelming levels, honoring your need for beauty, meaning, and emotional authenticity, even when the world pushes you toward efficiency and emotional suppression. It also means accepting that your path will look different from others. You can't live the same way people with closed hearts live. You can't maintain the same pace, tolerate the same environments, show up in the same ways. Your open heart requires different choices, different priorities, different structures. This isn't failure or weakness. It's simply adapting your life to match your actual nature, rather than forcing yourself into templates designed for different types of people. The beautiful burden of an open heart is that you've been given a gift that sometimes feels more like a curse. You have capacity for experiences that create profound meaning and connection, but that capacity comes with vulnerability and pain that can feel unbearable. You can't keep the good without accepting the difficult. They're not separate offerings. They're two aspects of the same fundamental openness. What matters now is recognizing that your tears, your deep feelings, your quick emotions, your inability to hide, all of this comes from having an open heart. And an open heart is not a design flaw. It's a way of being fully human, fully alive, fully present to the reality of existence in all its beauty and pain. The world needs people like you, even when it doesn't know how to value or support you properly. Your tears aren't weakness. They're evidence of a heart that remained open despite every reason to close. They're proof that you still feel, still care, still let life touch you. In a world growing increasingly numb and defended, your willingness to cry, to feel deeply, to be moved by beauty and broken by suffering. This is radical authenticity. This is courage. This is strength in its most vulnerable, most powerful form. And if no one else has told you this, your sensitivity is valid. Your tears matter. Your open heart is a gift worth protecting and honoring. You're not too much or too sensitive or too emotional. You're exactly as you need to be, feeling exactly as deeply as your nature requires. The challenge isn't to change who you are, but to build a life that works for someone with your beautiful, burdensome, completely valid open heart.